everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we're going to be making sourdough two ways, chocolate chip cookies, and some grilled cheeses. We're going to start by making the bases of our sourdough. We're going to have one traditional, and then we're going to be doing green onions and cheddar cheese for our second one. So for our base loaf, we are going to start out by adding 100 grams of active starter to our bowl. So I fed this baby this morning. He's nice and bubbly and ready to go for bread making. So I'm gonna give him a nice stir, and then we're gonna put in 100 grams. Of course it's on ounces. So let me start that over. I didn't look and pay attention. So this will have a little extra, so we'll take a gram off or two. So grams, not ounces. That would be a lot of sourdough starter. Okay. And then we're gonna put 100 grams in my other bowl. And there we go. And remember, you want to have fed your starter within the last 6 to 8 hours so it's nice and bubbly and active, so it will allow your bread to rise. Okay, we've got 100 on each one. And now we're going to add 375 grams of warm water, which is about 1.5 cups. So you want warm water for this so it incorporates well into the flour. So we want 375 grams of warm water. And I always use a scale for this, and my sourdough comes out perfect every time. I find if you try to use like cups and whatnot, it doesn't always come out. Just because sometimes you can have a cup packed more with flour than not. So grams are always accurate. And I'm gonna put 375 in this bowl as well. And you wanna use warm water. It doesn't have to be scalding hot, just warm. So I just kind of turn my sink on and let it heat up all the way, and then I put it in. There we go. So we got 375 grams of warm water. Now, using my dough whisk, I'm just gonna stir it up until it's all mixed. This way it will incorporate into our flour.
And what are you making right now?
We are making the sourdough bread bases. So we're gonna be doing just a basic sourdough bread, and then we're gonna be doing a green onions and cheddar cheese sourdough bread. So right now I'm stirring my active sourdough starter into warm water. And then for my traditional, or my plain, I'm gonna add in about 2 teaspoons of salt. So 1, 2. In my cheddar cheese and green onion one, I'm gonna be using garlic salt. And I'm gonna add in about 2 teaspoons of garlic salt. So we're gonna be using it just, garlic salt will give it a little extra flavor that will pair well with the cheddar cheese and the things. And we're gonna give that a little stir. And now I'm gonna measure out 500 grams of unbleached bread flour. So I've got my bread flour. You need unbleached for the sourdough process to happen. Otherwise, it just won't rise, because the bleaching process kills all the good enzymes needed for the fermentation process. So we're gonna add in 500, which is roughly around 3 cups of flour. There we go, we're at about 330. 501, perfect. So I'm gonna pour this one in here, shake it off, and then we're gonna redo over here on this scale. So gonna need about 3 cups to make 500 grams. And you, again, unbleached bread flour. Okay. And we've got my 500 there. Now I'm gonna add this here. And we're done with the scale. Using my dough whisk, I'm going to incorporate our things. If you don't have a dough whisk and you're into making sourdough, you should just get one. It is so much easier to mix it than with a regular spoon. It is a lot easier. There we go. I'm just gonna mix it in nice. Using the warm water helps it, the flour incorporate a lot easier than if you're using cold water. Sourdough is a little sticky to work with, but that leaves for a really nice dough. So what I do when I'm gonna do the folding stage in a little bit, I just dust my hands with a little bit of flour so it doesn't stick on me. There we go. We're gonna let this sit now while we make everything else, and then I will fold green onions and cheddar cheese into this during the next stage when we fold it in.
You got a question? What are you making?
We are making 2 types of sourdough bread right now. This is going to be our basic sourdough, and this is going to be a green onions and cheddar cheese sourdough. We're also going to make some grilled cheeses and some chocolate chip cookies. Mix this in. Roll up my sleeve a little bit. And give it a good stir, incorporate. And then we're going to let it sit until we're about done cooking everything else, and then we're going to start the first fold of a series of 4 fold sessions for our sourdough. There we go. Have it nice and incorporated. Yep. And it doesn't look like too much right now, but by the time we are done with our folding sessions, this will be a nice dough that will be forming into sourdough balls pretty big. But we're gonna let it sit over on the counter for while we do all of this, and then we'll do our first fold and stretch. Okay, now we can prep our grilled cheeses, then we'll make our cookies, and we'll tend to that, and we'll prep all of this, so we've got a lot to do. Okay, so we're using up the last of our sourdough bread from when we made before. We had, we have very little left of this. This is our garlic and rosemary. And this is just our basic traditional sourdough, which we'll be making again. The basic is just everyone's favorite. They love it. But I love to add little, and this one turned out so good. As you can see, we have hardly any left. So we'll be making our last grilled cheeses out of this. And let's see. Cut. It's kind of hard to cut them when you get down to the very end. Okay, I think we'll have, let's see, one will be a halvesy and one will be all traditional. Just gonna try to cut a little bit off of this one so it's not so thick. Okay, we've got our 2 slices. This will be good for toast later. Can't let it go to waste. Okay, so what we're gonna start is, want to try to get 2 slices of bread that are about the same. I think these 2 will work well, and these 2. Okay, where did I put my, there it is. We are gonna I have some room temperature butter. We are going to spread some butter on just one side of the bread. This is gonna be the bread that's gonna go face down on the skillet, so it will crisp up nicely. And just one side. You don't need to butter the insides of your bread because that's going to be where the cheese and all the other good flavors are. We're going to spread it right here. And give it a good spread on this guy. And well, you don't need much bread or butter for it. It spreads pretty easy. And then I don't use butter on my skillet. I find if you put butter on your skillet while making your grilled cheeses, that butter can burn on the sides that aren't touching the bread. So we're gonna play each one of these face down. And now we're gonna start. So for what I'm going to be making for myself today, I'm gonna be doing Gouda, prosciutto, and then I'm gonna kind of chop up some tomatoes and some fresh basil and use a little bit of balsamic glaze to kind of make a Mediterranean style grilled cheese. And then for my husband, I'm gonna be just doing salami and cheddar cheese because he's more of a plain Jane and doesn't like it as bougie as I do. So I've got my first layer of Gouda. Gouda is probably one of my favorite cheeses. I absolutely love it. We grew up eating it because it was always on our smorgasbord for Christmas. And that's a smorgasbord is like the Swedish word for like a feast. And we always had a big Swedish feast at Christmas time, and you'd have all these different like cheeses, and Gouda is a very popular cheese in Sweden. There we go. Now we're gonna do our meat layer. So I'm gonna use some Genoa salami for my husband's. Genoa salami is a bit milder than hard salami, but very similar in the taste, and it's not quite as sweet. Hard salami has a little sweet undertones. I don't find that Genoa salami has as much of that. There we go. I'll do one more for him. And then I'm going to use some prosciutto. I love prosciutto. On mine, except it's always so expensive and you get so little of it for how much it costs. If I just gotta be able to open it, which I can't. There we go. And get that open. We're gonna get some yummy prosciutto. One of the things I love to eat prosciutto is with like either cantaloupe or honeydew melon. You just wrap it around it and eat it. So good. So we're gonna put just 2 slices of prosciutto. You don't need a lot. And we're gonna put those on there nice and delicately. And now I'm going to chop up some of my tomatoes. I'm just using 5 cherry tomatoes because I'm not putting a whole bunch on it. I'm just gonna quarter them and then chop them. So just a small little dice on it, but on our tomato. That way, when you bite into it, you're not gonna get a huge one, but just a nice little brightness into it. There we go. And if you had a full, like a plum tomato or an heirloom tomato, you could cut it really thinly and like put it across. But all I had were cherry tomatoes. And I'm just gonna layer it. Very beautiful. Perfect. And then I'm gonna use a little bit of balsamic glaze, which is essentially balsamic vinegar that has been reduced down. It's so sweet. It's not as tangy, but delicious nonetheless. Give it a shake. Okay. Now we'll just give it a little tangy flavor. And I'm gonna grab my basil plant that has been well picked. And we are going to add some fresh basil leaves to our sandwich. Perfect. In the summer when my garden is bursting with basil, this would be a great sandwich to make. Okay, now for the second layer of cheese. I'll finish my husband's off with some cheddar. And then I'll use another layer of Gouda for mine. When you're putting your cheese on, you just want to make sure it doesn't overlap. Otherwise, it will just burn down onto your skillet. So I always make sure it's not going to flow over. And perfect. Okay. Now we're ready to put our second layer on, butter facing up. And I'm gonna turn my skillet on to about a 7. Once it heats up, I'll turn it down, but my skillet's gonna warm up nicely, and then I'll be listening for the sizzle for the first flip. While we're doing that, we are going to make our chocolate chip cookies. We're not going to be baking our chocolate chip cookies because for my chocolate chip cookies, you want them to chill in the freezer for a couple of hours until they're nice and cold, and then we'll bake them up. And that's so you're gonna get a really nice chewy cookie that's just perfect. I'm going to be adding in 2 sticks of room temperature butter. So there we go. Get my thing.
And will you be posting the recipe for these cookies?
Yes, I'll be posting the recipe for these cookies, and then we'll be baking them off tonight with dinner. So I've got my 2 sticks of butter, and then we're gonna add 3/4 of a cup of white sugar and 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar into it, and we're gonna cream them nice together. And that's why you want to use room temperature butter over cold, because cold butter is harder to cream. You can do it, but it will take you a bit longer, and it will more likely stick to your sides. So, and I like using a hand mixer or a stand mixer because it's just easier than a hand mixer or doing it by hand. But you could use the elbow grease and do it by hand if you wanted. So that's 3/4 of a cup of white sugar, or just plain sugar. It's funny, I find the need to say white sugar, the same thing with milk when I'm talking about it. I'm like, white milk over chocolate milk. And then we're gonna use 3/4 of a cup of packed brown sugar. So most of the time when you're using brown sugar, they're always gonna say packed, and that's just because it needs to be kind of firmly in there to squish it up. So I'm gonna pack it down, and we're gonna add this. There we go. 3/4 of a cup brown sugar. And dust my hands off. And I'll set these out of the way since we are done with our sugar and our brown sugar. Okay, and we're gonna cream these 2 together. So I've got my hand mixer up. Get out my thing. So room temperature butter works the best. We're gonna be chilling this towards the end. You don't wanna melt your butter because that will give a completely different texture. We lose a little, that's fine. And then I start on low and then I increase the speed. If you start on high, it's gonna go everywhere, especially using powdered sugar. Always happens with powdered sugar. And I'm waiting for it to cream together, which means it's gonna combine into a nice paste almost. Perfect. So we've got this nice kind of paste where the butter and the sugars have completely incorporated and creamed together. And then we are going to add 2 eggs. So we start with this and then we do our wet ingredients next. But I do hear a sizzle, so let's see if they're ready for their first flip. When I'm making my grilled cheeses, I do 2 flips. There it is. Here's my favorite spatula. It's a fish spatula. So we're gonna do the first flip, which is just for warming up the bread and melting the butter so that it can start the melting process. And then we're gonna do our second flip. I've gotta be careful with this one because of my tomatoes on it. So I'm gonna kind of hold them firmly as I flip.
And you use this pan a lot. Is this your favorite pan for these?
Yes, for grilled cheeses, yes. I love this one because I can stick my spatula under and I can go in just like that. Real easy. Versus if you have a lip on it, you have to go scoop it. So I love my non-stick griddle. It's by Hexclad. I do think I have it in my shop. It is one of my favorites. I've yet to scratch it too. Okay, we are going to add in our 2 eggs. Beautiful. And then we're gonna cream these. You don't want to over mix them because you don't want your eggs to get fluffy. So we got them till they're just perfectly mixed. And then I'm going to add in a tablespoon of vanilla. If I can open this guy. He is fighting for his life. My hands are wet. Let me see if I can use a grippy towel. There we go. Finally got it. I didn't know if I was going to get this guy. Okay, 1 tablespoon of vanilla. It's the struggles we have. So 1 tablespoon vanilla. This is what's going to give them that just lovely flavor. And I can't even get the top back on. There we go. And we're going to cream this. And then while this is creaming, I'm going to do our next flip on our grilled cheese. Okay, and then I'm going to turn my heat down, and these next 2 stages are going to be our browning stages. Make sure I got that turned down. Okay, we've got our vanilla mixed in with the yolk, and now I am not a fan of sifting together flours and salts and baking sodas. So what I do is I mix my salt and my baking soda first to the wet mixture before I add the flour. It is much easier to blend this and get it mixed up evenly than it is to do it the other way. So we are going to use a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Also, the butter I used was salted butter. So if you're using unsalted butter, you're gonna wanna use a little bit more salt, like a 1/4 teaspoon more. And then 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And we're gonna give that a nice blend. And then before we add our flour in, I just always scrape down with a spatula just in case you have any butter or anything else stuck. Perfect. Scrape that off. And let's check on our grilled cheeses. It takes longer for the first one.
You have a question? What are you making today?
We are making grilled cheeses 2 ways. We've got kind of a Mediterranean grilled cheese with some tomatoes that keep escaping. And then we made sourdough 2 ways. We're gonna finish those off by adding in our green onions and cheddar cheese. And now we're prepping some chocolate chip cookies for the evening. So we made the base. Now we're going to add in some flour. We need 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. We're gonna mix these in. So 1, 2, and now I need 1/4 cup more. And we're gonna blend or mix these together. forming into our thick dough, which we want. Okay, so now we have our nice thick dough. You don't want to overbeat or overmix your dough because you don't want those eggs to get overmixed. Otherwise, they'll get kind of fluffy. And then we're going to add in a whole bag of chocolate chips. I love Ghirardelli, but you can use Whole House, anyone you want, or you could take chocolate and crunch it up. But I use the semi-sweet Ghirardelli, it's my favorite. We're going to add in a whole bag. And we're just gonna give it a quick mix. You don't wanna mix too much because it will break up the chocolate into it. So just a quick mix. And then I'm gonna take my spatula and push it all down, and we'll do one more mix. And then our grilled cheeses sound like they're about ready. Beautiful. So there's our dough. Let's look at our grilled cheeses. Perfect. Beautiful. They are ready to hop off on a plate. So we've got my husband's beautiful, nice golden crust.
You have a question. What brand of mixer do you have over there?
This is a KitchenAid Professional Series 620. I have had this mixer for 20 or maybe 20 years, 15, 20 years. I've had it for a long. I got it in college as a Christmas present, my sophomore year of college. So I'm going to tell you, this baby has been with me forever, and I love it. And I think I think it's now no longer 6 something, it's a different series, but I love it. But my one thing, let's do the grilled cheeses while they're nice and hot. Okay, so this one's my husband's. I'll break it apart and we'll do this one. This was the cheddar cheese and then Genoa salami. We've got that lovely, you can see the salami in there and the cheese. And then this was the bougie one. This one's mine. Gouda, tomatoes, prosciutto. Oh, look at all of that together. I'm gonna take a nice bite while it's hot. Delicious. Okay, so this one, this is a big mixer. If you are a small family, get the standard. Do not get the professional because this does not work good on small batches. It does not whip eggs well. So that is my one warning is don't get it if you are a small family or you don't make big batches of everything because the bowl is bigger, the mixer is, so like regular batches or trying to whip up a small amount of eggs is really hard in this. So that's my one warning. So here is our lovely chocolate chip cookie dough. So this is delicious. My kids love to eat it. What I do is I chill my dough in the fridge for a couple of hours or overnight. So we'll be baking them up with dinner tonight. You don't want to bake them right away because you want a cold dough. The cold dough is going to give you that chewy, delicious chocolate chip cookie. If you bake them up right now, the butter is already room temperature. It will just melt out and be flat. This is a lid that I use. I put it on and then I can pop it straight in the refrigerator. This is great when you're making lots of cookies. I love my lid. My husband thinks it's funny. So I've got my lid. I'm gonna pop this in the fridge and we are going to chill them for the next couple of hours. Now let's do our doughs. Okay, let me clear this area a little off. We've got our 2 doughs. We've got traditional sourdough, and then we gotta fold in some green onions and some chives. So before I pull it over here, I need to chop up my green onions and move these guys out of the way. We'll be eating those as soon as we say goodbye to you guys here. So I have about 1, 2, 3, 6 green onion stalks. I've washed them. I'm going to finely chop these guys up, okay? You don't want them to be super huge, and I'm sticking with the green part. I'm gonna leave the whiter parts out because those are pretty strong and pretty tough, so they don't get as nice in our batter. We're doing a really nice thing. You could also use chives if you wanted to. Chives are in the same family as green onions. They're just smaller, delicate, milder in flavor. So we're going here, and once I'm not gonna use these guys at the bottom because they've got a lot of flavor, a lot of potency, and I don't wanna have a big green onion bite in mine. So 6 stalks come in. This is, I'm gonna say, about around a half a cup maybe of it. And now we'll bring this over here, our cheddar cheese, and we're gonna make our first one. We're gonna do is our cheddar cheese sourdough. We already put, instead of regular salt, we did garlic salt in here. Sourdough can be a bit sticky at first. So what I do is I'm just gonna take a little bit of flour, cover my hands, and this will help us with the fold and stick. So we've got it. I'm gonna flip it upside down. And now we're gonna add in our green onions and about a cup of cheddar cheese. I'm eyeballing it, but if you're one of those who really likes to have exact measurements, it's gonna be about a cup. There you go. So, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna stretch and fold this into our dough. So I'm gonna pull it out and I'm gonna fold it. Stretch and pull. Stretch and pull. Because I don't wanna like knead it in, I really wanna fold it in. That's gonna give us our nice, like bubbly, but not huge bubble layers. There we go. Stretch.
So it's similar to the other specialty dough?
Yes, it's very similar. This is how I add in my flavors. It's just using the basic, for a basic now ones. If we're gonna have a more seasoned dough with spices, it's gonna be a little bit differently, but
otherwise you just put it on top and fold it in?
Yes. Okay, so now we've got this guy all folded in. Beautiful. So here's our first loaf. I'm gonna give my hands a little bit of a wash because I don't want green onions and cheese going on to our next one. We're gonna do this, we're gonna fold and stretch in 30 minutes again, and we'll do that 3 more times, and then we'll leave it on the counter to proof. Okay. And then we're gonna grab our other loaf, which is our traditional, and if your dough is sticky, which I like, it makes for a lovely bread. Again, just grab a little handful of flour, really flour your hands up to get through this process of the fold and the stretch.
And these won't be baked tonight?
No,
right?
We'll bake them tomorrow night at dinner, because right now we're gonna do the fold and stretch every 30 minutes for the next 2 hours. Then we will cover them, sit them on the counter for anywhere between 4 and 8 hours. Then I'll pop it in the fridge and for about 24 hours, and then we can bake them up. So this will be ready for us to bake tomorrow night. The dough is sticky now, it gets less sticky with time. There we go. So here's the first fold and stretch of that. It's gonna sit for 30 minutes, then we will do the fold and stretch again. You do that 4 times, really key. Well, that is all for today. We'll be baking our chocolate chip cookies up later tonight for dinner, so you'll have to join us for the stream then. But we'll definitely post a picture of that with the recipe card. Thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We love it when you guys send us messages or comments. Please send us any recipe requests. We just did chicken and dumplings. We had a recipe request for that. Again, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.